Hello everyone. And welcome back to part 2 of What If Deku Became a Demon. If you enjoy, support the channel by subscribe and sharing the video. Support the author Professional Ranter. Now enjoy the video. Bye, Mom. I'm off to UA. Inko could hear Izuku yell out, accompanied by the door closing. She smiled softly, happy that her son managed to get into his dream school without her using her magic to help him. She had a feeling he would have been able to, but it seems that whatever he had been doing, Toshinori Yagi had helped to awaken a part of his demonic heritage. Something that made her quite happy. I'll be telling him the truth soon. I should let him get used to his current abilities first though. Inko got up from her small desk and stretched her arms, feeling some of her joints pop. She looked at her computer, something that had helped her keep up with various events of the world and catch up on things that she missed during the beginning of the Dawn of Quirks when she was still in hell. I'll need to upgrade this thing again. I should go look at the newer ones. Inko would then go for one of the cheaper options. Part of her cover was as a low-income single mother raising her son while his father was out of the picture. She had created a small company and set up an illusionary staff where she worked one of the lower-tier jobs, of course setting it up in advance long before she gave birth so it could legitimately establish itself as a business. She had worked herself up to a lower middle-tier job with properly placed promotions, something that had given her cover more credibility than just simply working somewhere. Inko grabbed her purse and stepped out of the apartment. As she locked the door, she looked at it for a moment. I should give myself a promotion within the company, get myself a raise, and then Izuku and I could move into a house. She smiled at the idea, one that she'd had before but held off on until it felt right. I think now is the time to do that. She walked to the elevator and took it down, humming to herself as she did. Once Izuku has a grasp on his current abilities, I should introduce him to Charlotte. They'll get along like peas in a pod. Inko giggled to herself, although I wonder how he'll feel about Sarah's. He did always say he wanted a big sister back when he was little. Integra and Alexander will most likely spoil him rotten. Alucard, that first meeting will be interesting. Stepping out of the elevator, Inko left the apartment building and started walking to the grocery store. Hey, Inko. She stopped herself from grimacing as Mitsuki ran and quickly fell in step with her, heading to the store. Yes, I need to pick up some groceries and I'm hoping to look at some computers. Mine is starting to show its age and I need to get a new one. Inko made small talk with Mitsuki, wishing the woman would just go away. There had been a time when she had considered Mitsuki and Masaru her friends, but since seeing how they ignored Katsuki's blatant abuse of others, reckless use of his quirk, and all-around delinquent behavior, her opinion of the couple had quickly soured. Maybe they'll become better parents once I find Katsuki's guardian angel and rip its wings off before choking it with its own halo. The kind smile she wore as she talked with Mitsuki contrasted her twisted thoughts. Of course, I'm hoping to see if there are any new cooking classes for Izuku as well. You should have seen him when he came home with an autograph from Lunch Rush. He was so happy. I'll force-feed Katsuki with the angel's entrails if he doesn't stop with the abuse he puts my son through. She could already sense the brat yelling at her son at UA. No surprise there. Mitsuki shook her head. Katsuki would not shut up about how he got into UA with top points all last week. It was getting annoying. He didn't even talk about any of his classes or classmates that he met. Mitsuki scratched the back of her neck. He kept going on about how he was going to be top of the class and everything. I just don't get where he got such a huge ego. Aldera, you stupid bimbo. Or did you just ignore how the teachers acted when talking to you about him, or how everything they said about him directly contradicted how he actually acts? Inko had to fight to keep from glaring at Mitsuki. Oh, well, I'm sure something will bring him back down to earth. He is after all at UA now. All of his new classmates passed the entrance exam as well, and Izuku told me there were some in the class who got in on recommendations. Why, I've even heard the little brother of Ingenium and the son of Endeavor are in that class. Katsuki will have some stiff competition. Inko managed to keep smiling even though all she wanted to do was rip Katsuki limb from limb. It's like the saying goes, competition breeds humility. Inko had no idea if anyone had actually said that. She had just heard it once from Lucifer when he decided to create the Overlord system. Although she could be misremembering, she had just visited Hades and Persephone and her mind was still on her two friends. Really? You think he'd mention something about them? Mitsuki trailed off as she noticed Inko gripping her purse rather tightly. You okay? Ha! Inko realized what she was doing and relaxed her grip. Oh, it's nothing, I've just been worried about how Izuku is doing at UA. He told me they were doing their first heroics class today and it's just got me all jittered. Mitsuki let out a loud laugh and patted Inko on the back. You gotta stop being such a worrywart. Izuku's gonna be fine. Ah, I gotta get going. Nice talking to you, Inko. Mitsuki waved as she turned a corner. Inko returned the wave as she continued on her way. Can't say it was the same. She walked a few more blocks before finally getting to the grocery store. Izuku said we were running out of some vegetables, we're out of eggs, and we need some milk. Once I get those back home I'll go look into the cooking classes and the computers. With a plan in mind for how her day was going to go, Inko began grabbing the vegetables that they were running out of back home. Izuku said that their first heroics class would be their last class of the day. I'll check in during it just to make sure that everything is okay. Grabbing a shopping cart, Inko began grabbing what she needed, all the while trying to keep her anger in check from the conversation she had just had. Even with a guardian angel watching over the brat, his behavior is still blatantly obvious. How is she not seeing it? For that matter, if she is seeing it, why doesn't she do anything? Masaru usually has more work to do at their company designing the clothes and everything, while Mitsuki handles the accounting and scheduling of the fashion shows, most of which she usually does from home. She's home more often than him. But why? Why don't either of them see what is right in front of them? They're not taking a gamble hoping UA or someone else will correct Katsuki. I'd know, so why aren't they aware of his behavior? It was a question that had plagued Inko since she first became aware of what Katsuki was doing to her son. She had once broached the subject of what it was like for them growing up, hoping she could find some sort of answer for why they parent Katsuki the way that they do, but a sudden villain attack had kept them from even refusing to answer, and she hadn't tried to ask again given that the guardian angel had started to increase Katsuki's positive karma exponentially, an occurrence she was sure related to the question. She would have tried it again, but Izuku's torment had increased due to the boon Katsuki got, so she had to focus on manipulating the karma of some of Izuku's other tormentors, as well as doing minor restocks of Izuku's medkit he kept hidden under his bed, while continuing her investigation into discovering the identity of the angel. Something is going on here with that angel, I just can't figure out what. Do they sense Izuku's demonic heritage perhaps? It's also possible they are unaware of our true heritage, but that raises even more questions then. I wish I could ask Integra for help with this, but given the time difference with the mortal world and hell, it's hard to actually get her at a time when she or any of the others aren't busy. Inko grabbed a carton of milk and looked down at the cart with the rest of the stuff on the list within. She had been so lost in thought she hadn't even noticed she had gotten everything until the coldness of the milk gave her a minor shock and brought her back to reality. I need to solve this problem soon. With Izuku awakening his heritage and the angel ramping up its efforts to shield Katsuki, something is going to go wrong soon. Inko walked to the checkout and quickly paid for the groceries and began making her way back to the apartment. Should I have made sure Izuku was put in the 1B class? It would have put him away from Katsuki. Damn it, why didn't I think of that? She hadn't thought of it because she had been far too focused on learning the angel's identity, something that was quickly becoming an obsession for her. I'll need to see if I could create a transfer for him. This early in the year I would be able to set something up and no one would question it. I'll get right on it after I check out the classes and computers. Inko stood at a crosswalk and she could distantly hear a villain fighting a hero. Some of the people around her decided to make their way to it to watch the fight. How many times has Izuku done that? Well, that's not truly fair. Most of the time they're blocking his route to wherever he's going. Course then he'll take out that notebook of his and start his cute little mutterings. Inko smiled softly at the habit her son had picked up. I'm certain he'll be acting much the same once he learns about the different types of demons within hell, and he has already used figures from the pantheons when talking about some of the heroes and villains he's analyzed. The question is, how do I reveal all of this to him? Inko quickly crossed the street and then cut through an alleyway. Once he learns about the world of the supernatural, things could change between us, especially when he learns about who he's related to. Inko chuckled softly at the thought of Izuku learning he was related to Lucifer himself. Getting back to her apartment, she quickly put the groceries away while checking on her observation spells. Katsuki is still being a brat, no surprise there. The homeroom teacher is asleep again. What is wrong with him? Oh, Izuku is talking with Midnight about hero costumes, and he's using the costume I made for him as a base. Inko smiled at her son's ramblings about how hero costumes could help with controlling one's quirk. They have lunch soon, then a few more classes before their first heroics class. So I have a few more hours before it happens. I best wrap up with the rest of my errands so I can ensure Katsuki doesn't get paired up with Izuku. Inko had to recast the spells every morning to observe Katsuki, and once she and Izuku ate and her son was off, she would look over the footage from yesterday's spell. She had an entire archive she had observed through, documenting every instance of the angel abusing its powers over karma. Midnight is a good teacher. I just wish she'd drop that act of flirting with the students during the sports festival. If a demon only knew her from those, they might think she's a succubus in disguise. Inko herself had thought that when she first saw Midnight's costume and persona, especially when she saw the first iteration of the heroine's costume. She had quickly been proven wrong, though, with a few days of observation thankfully, but perhaps she could be one I could make a deal with. That would grant me someone inside UA that could possibly punish Katsuki, or even get him expelled. I'll need to figure out what to offer though. Inko let out a heavy sigh. How long has it been since I started investigating this angel? It feels like Izuku and I haven't been spending a lot of time with each other since it started. She hit her head against the closed fridge. I should just contact one of them to help me out with it. Doing it by myself hasn't made it go any faster. Inko at times wished she could just tell Izuku everything, the truth about their heritage, about the angel watching over Katsuki, even just the fact that he did have family outside of her and that they would love him no matter what. But she was afraid of how he would react when he learned the truth about what his mother was truly like. He's so much like his father, but even then he's so much like me as well. And just like his parents, he hates liars. Inko stepped away from the fridge and got ready to go out again. I need to tell him though, the more I keep putting it off the more dangerous it will become for him as he awakens more of his heritage. And the more likely that he would hate her. Leaving her apartment for the second time that day, Inko headed for the train station. How should I tell him? Inko thought to herself as she waited for the train to arrive. Outright saying it or just acting like it's normal after he wakes up could send him into a panic attack. The train arrived and she got on, quickly finding a place for herself to sit. Sitting him down to talk about it would be best, but how to explain it in a way he would understand? He usually responds best to visuals, perhaps a visit to hell. The train rocked to a stop and Inko watched as people got on and off. Showing my true form would be another way, maybe if he met Charlie. She would be best suited to help ease him into the truth about everything. I can't exactly ask Lily or Lucy to help given their responsibilities. The train came to another stop and Inko got off. It's nearing time for the heroics class. I should look at the computers first, observe the class, then go look at cooking classes. Inko planned out as she walked to the store. She could feel her heart beating a mile a minute as the class neared. Maybe I should change the karma of some in preparation, just in case this takes longer than expected. Inko walked to the electronics section and looked at the many computers that were there, but her thoughts lay at UA. Can I help you, ma'am? An employee brought Inko out of her thoughts as they stepped up to her. Inko reoriented herself quickly. I'm looking for a new computer. Mine is starting to show its age and I do need one at home for when I have to work from there. Could you show me the cheap options? Inko gave her nicest smile to the employee. Of course, right this way please. The employee went further into the store and Inko followed after them. Is there anything specific in mind you want beyond it being cheap? A camera and microphone so I can do video calls, and it needs to be able to handle multiple windows being open at the same time for when I have meetings. I hope that doesn't eliminate all the cheap options. The employee waved their hand dismissing Inko's concern. A lot of computers nowadays have those as default, so it's not an issue. We will need to up the base price to get one that has the processing power for multiple person video calls and all that, but it shouldn't be too much of an increase. The employee stopped before a computer. This is a bit of an older model than everything else, released last year, but it has all of your needs met. An issue is that it can't handle video calls that have more than 6 people on it. Would that be an issue? While the CEO of the company that Inko had created was just Inko herself and she did have some illusionary staff, she had hired some real people once the company had started to gain a reputation. If it was just illusionary staff it wouldn't be a problem for her, but given the fact that she does meet with real people over the computer, often the meetings I'm a part of have at least 10 people, so this one won't work for me. 3 out of 10 employees at the company were illusionary staff, so she needed something that could handle real connections instead of simply the fake ones she would make. Alright then, that crosses off a couple other models, let's go look over here. The employee led her to another computer. The price was somewhat higher than the last one, but it was still within Inko's price range. Can support video calls of up to 20 people, built-in camera and microphone, and the processing power to handle multiple windows open at the same time. The model is almost 10 months old and comes from Deternet. The only issue relating to your needs is that the battery drains fast the more people that are on a call if you have it unplugged. Inko picked up the floor model and gave it a look over. It's a bit too small for me. Are there any similar models that are bigger? The employee walked over to a computer nearby. Indeed we do, this one can support video calls with up to 25 people, it has the camera, microphone, and processing power of the last model and with a better battery as well, all thanks to Hatsum Industries. With your specifications, it should meet all of your needs. Inko picked up the model and gave it a once-over. It's perf. Suddenly a pain pierced her heart and with a labored gasp she dropped the floor model and stumbled back, clutching at her heart. Ma'am? Are you okay? No. Inko's eyes veered around wildly. Why can't I feel it anymore? Where is Izuku's heartbeat? The heartbeat that she always listened to in the back of her mind was silent. What's happened? The employee stepped forward to try and help Inko when she suddenly disappeared, leaving a crater on the floor and a hole in the roof. Inko fell on the roof of a building as she gripped at her chest, her heart beating wildly as the connection she had with her son was severed. Izuku! She screamed out. Ba bump, ba bump, ba bump. Suddenly she could hear Izuku's heartbeat again, but it was wrong. It was slow and quiet, a sound she had only heard once before. No, when the gates of hell were almost destroyed. No, when she had to study an entirely new species of demon before wiping them out. And oh. Ethereal chains suddenly appeared around Inko and shattered as she grew to her true height, and horns sprouted from her head and her skin changed to a dark green. One look at the observation spell told her everything. Giant wings easily twice Inko's height sprouted from her back as she took to the skies. Katsuki Bakugu. She took off for UA as she heard her now undead son roar, and she let out a heart-wrenching scream as she forced her body to go faster, shattering the glass for miles around her. Her son was now an undead demon, murdered by Katsuki Bakugu, who was protected by a guardian angel. And Inko hadn't done anything to stop it. She had ignored the spells, ignored her gut feeling, and her son paid the price for her mistake. An alarm blared through an apartment, but it went ignored. The sole occupant was one Toshinori Yagi, who was focusing on a book while he bit into some toast. In order to summon a demon of high rank you need either a sacrifice that would be of great value to the demon or an amount of blood equal to the demon's power. The true name of the demon will need to be uttered for the ritual to be accurate. If none of these requirements can be met, then search for the demon's personal summoning ritual. He spoke out loud what he read as he wrote it down in a journal, taking a quick drink of coffee to keep himself awake. But this doesn't tell any way to properly measure the power of the demon or how much blood or way to measure the worth of the sacrifice, he grunted out as he downed the rest of the coffee. There were dozens of these books scattered all throughout his apartment. He'd immediately had Recovery Girl heal him and then resigned from his teaching position at UA and immediately beginning the search to either make contact with Izuku or his mother. In the last 5 days All Might had helped put away 4 cults, while making copies of their sacred texts and what they knew of summoning rituals. He even opened up his family's vault, holding various occult artifacts within. His great-grandfather was the type of person to collect the occult believing them to be real, and he'd left a small vault to his descendants to carry on his work, but everyone had just left it be with plans to sell the contents within if they ever ended up needed extra money. Most of this stuff predates even the century before the dawn of quirks, and what the hell is the Gojo clan? I should see if anyone knows anything about them, might give me something, Toshinori muttered aloud. He put the book down on top of a pile of books he'd already gone through as he got up and went to his kitchen to get something to eat. He'd slept only for a few hours when he needed to, and then he got right back to work researching and doing work as All Might. getting micro naps in between like he used to back when he was running from All for One. Grabbing a few things out of the fridge, mostly fruits, he got to work blending them up into a smoothie. It made it easier to keep things down with his damaged stomach if they weren't solid. Have I had any episodes recently? His thoughts turned to when he would regularly puke up blood because he aggravated his injury. Recovery girl did ask for me to come in today to do another checkup and make sure everything is okay. I should ask her to check on how my organs are doing. Finishing making his smoothie, he poured it into a cup and began to drink it as he walked through his apartment to find his shoes. He lived quite modestly despite his position as the #1 hero. He only ever spent what he needed on food and maintenance for his apartment, with some extra saved to the side for emergencies. Everything else he put into charities he knew he could trust with the money, or to the other hero schools besides UA so they could have a better chance at competing with his alma mater. Now he was using his emergency funds to get his hands on anything that could help him find Izuku, and he had plenty of money to burn through. Finding his shoes, he put them on and finished his smoothie before putting it in the sink and walking to the door, grabbing his coat off the hook as he passed it. Locking the door behind him, he walked through the complex and down the stairs as he went for his car. Still owe David for this, and I might need to owe him some more if I don't find something soon, Toshinori thought to himself as he started the car up and eased himself into the flow of traffic. Nothing new yet in terms of investigations into cults, but I've already put out the word that I'm willing to help take them down. Meanwhile, I still can't figure out what Grandpa Koichi meant by stands or jujitsu sorcerers. Can't find anything on it, but he does talk about a technique. I can try it later. What's holding up the traffic? Toshinori looked out the window to see a villain facing off against some heroes in the distance. Damn it, I do not have time for this. Toshinori pulled out of traffic and into an alleyway. He set the car's autopilot to return home while he got out. Activating one for all, he rushed out. Striking the villain fast while getting the hostages to safety, he passed the heroes. Sorry, got an appointment to keep. He yelled back as he ran all the way to UA, stopping a few more crimes along his way. Making it to the gates, he walked in and headed off to the staff entrance. While he had resigned, Nizu had insisted on him keeping a key, so that he could at the very least be a guest speaker for some of the classes. Ducking into the small alcove where there were no cameras, he deflated and made his way first to Nizu's office. Standing in front of the door, he raised his hand to knock, but it opened before he could. Has there ever been a time you won't do that? Nizu chuckled lightly at the jab. None so far. How has your search been? Toshinori sat down and took his journal out of his coat pocket. Pretty lackluster so far. But that's to be expected, since a lot of the stuff I've been able to find just talks about theories. But my great-grandpa Koichi found something that might give me a clue. You ever heard of the Gojo clan? Can't say that I have, but I can look into it. I've seen that you've been helping take down cults. I'll see what I can do on my end to help you take down a few more. Nizu poured them both some tea and took a sip from his cup. The research on my end hasn't borne much fruit either. Aside from a recent incident that got Toshinori's attention, Inko Midoriya, if that is her real name, was sighted, with an altered appearance but still recognizable. She kidnapped the parents of Katsuki Bakugo. Toshinori gripped his hand tight at the mention his successor's murderer, and left a large pentagram behind in their destroyed living room. She took them from their home. It was quite brazen, and she was clearly sending a message to the young Bakugo. Sometime after the couple had entered the house, a man with feathers for hair was seen entering. We believe he may be another demon, but we don't have anything to go off. What was the message for Bakugo? Nizu looked at All Might with full seriousness. Nowhere is safe for him. The only thing keeping him safe is the guardian angel that watches over him. Furthermore, she cut him off from his parents, two people who appear to have been blind to his true self and would have fought for him to remain in the hero course. As of right now, the board is keeping him there as a guest under UA's protection. Why would they do that? Toshinori yelled out, slamming his fist on the table. He murdered young Midoriya. It doesn't matter if he's a demon, it's still murder. I agree, and I showed all the proof I could get my paws on that Bakugo had killed him with intent, but they used the excuse that Inko Midoriya is after him to keep him here and for his training to continue so he can defend himself. I'm beginning to suspect that the protection of an angel may do more than the stories say. Snipe is doing his best to keep him under control, but his ego is out of control, and for some inane reason Ejiro Kirishima is defending him. Nizu leaned back with a huff and crossed his arms. He's saying that he's clearly destined to be the greatest hero ever since he's even made demons wish him dead. He brags about murdering Izuku Midoriya like it's some kind of achievement. Toshinori grit his teeth. Do you need help dealing with the board? Not until I know the extent of the guardian angel's influences, Nizu told him, and I may not learn that until I make contact with Inko Midoriya. Hell, the Isle Casino. Inko rubbed at her eyes as she made her way through the paperwork. Get me something caffeinated to drink, she ordered Mitsuki, who immediately ran off. Normally I can handle paperwork like this, I'd even be done with it by now. But something keeps catching my attention in the mortal world. Go get Sarah's for me, immediately. She ordered Masaru, who left just as quickly as his wife. They've been proving themselves to be hard workers. Heinkel and Yumiko haven't given any complaints. Perhaps I can ease their restrictions a bit, after I handle whatever is calling my attention. Mortal world, Japan, UA. Toshinori dragged a hand down his face as he groaned. Unfortunately, I haven't found anything that could help us with that. Any sort of sacrifice or ritual used could potentially work, but she would need to choose to accept. If we wanted to force her to answer, it would need to be with a sacrifice of either immense value or power. That won't work though, because I can't find anything that could point towards her standing within hell politically. Furthermore, I don't have any sort of way to measure out the worth of said sacrifice. Nizu rubbed his chin. That is puzzling. Oh, before I forget, Class 1A is doing the USJ today. It is a bit delayed, but it is something necessary for them to learn. They're sharing the spot with 1B. Do you think you could give them some advice later? Something that could help them with handling disaster relief. Toshinori mulled the request over. Young Midoriya would have loved it. He would probably fanboy about 13. Toshinori let out a mirthless chuckle as he shook his head. Hell, the Hazbin Hotel. It was a quiet day at the hotel. Angel for once wasn't making any racket as he was currently sitting on the couch pouting. What's up with him? Vaggie asked. Izuku banned him from being his taste tester for 3 days because he used drugs, Tenya explained as he helped move stuff around the lobby in order to make it more presentable. Do you want it here, Nifty? He put the chair he was holding down and looked at the maid, who gave him a thumbs up as she worked to hunt the roaches that had invaded her domain. Vaggie sighed. I don't get what the big deal is. I mean, sure, his food is good, but I don't think it needs this kind of reaction. No surprise from you, your girlfriend can just get you food that's from the human world if you just ask, Angel snarked, but I finally got to eat some pasta that didn't taste like the flour was made with blood in it. Izuku actually has standards for his work, and he makes sure everything is clean. Can you name another kitchen within hell that I could go to that has those standards? Vaggie opened her mouth to retort, motherfucker. Izuku yelled as he slammed the doors to the kitchen open. Looking around, his eyes zeroed in on Alastair. You. He pointed at him. What the fuck is this? He held up the rotting carcass of a deer. My lunch, why did you take it out the oven? Alastair asked as his tendrils moved to reclaim his meal, but Izuku kept it away as he walked towards the incinerator. You threw out the chicken I was making. And I have to decontaminate everything now because this thing has fucking maggots in it. He opened the incinerator and threw the carcass in. He spun around and stalked towards Alastair. If you ever do this again in my kitchen, I swear I will dash. And what came out of Izuku could only be described as the most colorfully designed threat anyone had ever heard. So colorful in fact that it had to be censored. Tenya and Ochako looked on in shock while Husk had spit out his drink. Angel Dust looked on in awe and Vaggie looked somewhat impressed. Alastair's smile only widened in amusement. Do I make myself clear? Perfectly. Great. Vaggie, could you help me sort through something while I clean? Angel, you know what you have to do if you want the ban to lift. Izuku stalked back to his kitchen. Vaggie entered soon after. So what do you need help sorting? Izuku gestured over to where a large pile of binders were. The green ones hold recipes I haven't done yet, the red ones hold ones I have done. I just need you to sort it so they're separate over on the shelves. He said, his voice muffled as he dug out various cleaners from the supply closet. Where did all of this come from? Vaggie asked, surprised. There hadn't been any deliveries made to the hotel recently. Pretty sure they were dropped off by Mom while we were all asleep, Izuku answered bitterly. I've already sorted through the rest of my possessions, just need help with these. Mortal World, Japan, UA. I guess I can stop by, I'll do it after we're done talking. I still got some time until I have to meet with Chio, Toshinori answered. Nizu took a sip of his tea. I also wanted to bring up a concern I had regarding the press break-in, if you're willing to listen. Always. Outside the USJ. Snipe let out a loud sigh as he worked with Vlad King to get all the students organized. Bakugu, quiet down. Azui, please stop speaking so bluntly, you're antagonizing everyone. Minoma, stop trying to start a fight with 1A. Kenda, stop hitting Minoma. Shiozaki, not all of us are religious, please respect that choice. He went down the list of the more prominent ones causing problems. A little help would be nice, he snarked at Vlad King. Vlad King held up his hands. You seem to be doing just fine for your first class. How's it feel to no longer be working as a substitute? Snipe, also known as Sorihiko Torino, let out another sigh. He normally just helped the seniors in the hero course with training and did substitute work for any of the heroics classes in case their homeroom teacher was unavailable. He preferred teaching that way, but with Aizawa gone and the situation being what it was, he was best suited to handle 1A. I'd rather it be anyone else. Sorihiko took out his gun and fired into the air once. The students finally quieted down. I'd rather not have to do that again. Most of you are supposed to be part of the next generation of heroes. That means showing respect to others even if you don't like them. He stared at Minoma, knowing when to speak bluntly and when to just quiet down, knowing that you shouldn't hit your comrades, or perv on them. He shot Mineta a glare. To respect others' religious beliefs no matter what they may be, and above all to know that you do not dictate what is right or not. Your future job is to keep people safe and apprehend criminals. You are not gods, your quirks do not make you superior, and just because you are slated to become heroes does not put you above or make you immune to the law. 1B was confused by the last part of the speech, but 1A knew full well what Sorihiko was referring to. Before we enter, you will be given a rundown on safety within this facility from its manager. Please remain quiet as 13 explains how this place works. Thank you, Snipe, 13 said as she stepped forward. Sorihiko went further back to stand next to Sekijiro. I knew you would do amazing, he told him as Sorihiko elbowed him lightly. Still would have liked some help. Yeah. So, word is you've got to tell Nizu how Aizawa was treating them. Anything I can help break? Snipe resisted the urge to sigh. Thankfully, unlike Aizawa's past classes, he didn't get a chance to do too many of his logical ruses on them. But I did have to go over everything that they had missed from orientation since Aizawa didn't even bother to hand out the pamphlets. Some of them were afraid of being expelled, and Yaoyorozu was surprised when she learned that Aizawa did in fact expel students, although none of them asked any questions about what for, or they may have lost trust in UA. Both of the heroes let out heavy sighs. Aizawa's tendency to expel students, perform logical ruses, and not do the basic school things such as orientation had always ended up sabotaging what few students managed to stay around. The teachers for classes 2A and 3A still hate him for costing them a few years of work because of the entire classes he expelled. My concern is what the investigation into the students he did expel and those he put marks on will turn up. Class 2A is a mess of nerves from what I've heard. Hound Dog has already been having sessions with them this early in the year. Yeah, I've seen them. They're afraid of being expelled at the drop of the hat if they mess up even once, Sekijiro informed. It ain't the best sight I've seen caused by Aizawa's teaching. Has there ever been a good sight? Snipe retorted, the last few years most of my work was helping his past students break the bad habits he forced them into. I actually made plans for 2A, remind me to send them to Sakai later. Now, let's get started with your first day of training here at the USJ. 13 finished her speech with a cheerful shout, and remember, if you want to do extra training here just sign up so you can be added to the schedule. I'll take the rest of the kids if you're willing to handle Bakugu, Snipe offered, and I'll buy you a meal wherever you want it from. Deal, Sekijiro agreed as he pulled Bakugu away from the others. Come on, you're not using the facility. The fuck you think you're doing? Bakugu yelled, drawing attention to him. I'm a student. No, you're under UA's protection. The only reason you're not at the main building is because the board insisted you remain with 1A, but it doesn't mean you're a student. Nizu had briefed both Sorahiko and Sekijiro on a loophole he had found in the board's wording in regard to Bakugo. He has to receive training, but it doesn't have to be with the students. So, while they are forced to keep him with the class, they don't have to train him alongside the other students, thus ensuring that Bakugo couldn't injure or kill any of them. If he breaks my facility, I'm arresting him, 13 muttered to Snipe. 13? Momo called out, you didn't say you hired fake villains for the simulations, how should we conduct ourselves with them? That question immediately had Sorahiko and 13 running to the edge of the stairs and looking down, seeing a dark portal opening at the bottom and several villains coming out, everyone out. Sorahiko yelled, taking his gun out of its holster, UA has been invaded by villains. A lanky villain covered in severed hands came out second to last with a towering beaked villain flanking him. Now they're here, you were supposed to be here 3 days ago, he spoke bitterly. They've been here before? 13 asked in shock. Sekijiro joined with the others as they tried to keep the villain's eyes off the kids. What's the plan, Snipe? You know these situations best. Snipe specialized in taking down groups of villains, typically working alongside other heroes, but he'd also done it solo as well. 13 was a rescue hero, so she rarely saw combat, and Sekijiro specialized in taking down powerful villains while other heroes handled any allies they may have. 13, get the kids out of here and get the rest of UA here. Vlad, the big one with the beak, isn't moving, so we prioritize the ones going after the kids. I'll cover you. Hey! Hands! Sorahiko yelled out, catching the leader's attention, what do you want? 13 immediately got to work ushering the kids back to the doors. Sorahiko was trying to stall for what little time he could get. I want to kill the symbol of peace, we are here to kill All Might. We are the League of Villains. Beak is their weapon against All Might, be wary, Sorahiko whispered to Sekijiro, he quit 6 days ago. He doesn't work here anymore. Hands stopped moving for a moment, then he began to scratch at his throat. What? Why would he quit? The villain that had created the portal gently grabbed Hands' hand and stopped him from continuing to scratch his throat. No matter, we can still bring him here if we kill enough people. Attack. And with that order they had run out of time to stall. 3 villains rushed to the foot of the stairs and readied their quirks. A lady fired needles from her hair. A guy with gun barrels for fingertips fired regular bullets while the guy with horns fired slugs. Snipe immediately fired 3 shots and manipulated the bullets to disable all the projectiles, child's play compared to the villains with shooting quirks he'd faced in the past. Rank D, C, B, and maybe a few A villains, Snipe analyzed as he looked over the villains. If they know how to get past security, they most likely have people in the other sectors. Don't let shadows get you. Vlad King let some of his blood out and formed gauntlets around his hands, hardening it as he rushed down and punched down the shooters. Doesn't matter. There's still a threat here. Taking aim, Snipe shot out the legs of 3 of the villains that tried to attack Vlad from behind while he worked himself to the middle, guiding the villains away from the stairs. A large multi-armed villain ran at Vlad, but he rushed the villain and wrapping his arms around him suplexed him into the ground. Snipe took a few steps down, and fired 5 more times, missing 2 of them and only one of them managing to incapacitate a villain. Damn it, things are getting too chaotic, hopefully 13 can dash. Stop! What are you doing? 13 yelled out. Snipe immediately ran back up and saw Bakugo, Kirishima, and Tetsu get swallowed up by shadows. In the chaos of the fight he had missed him getting behind. 13's quirk was then redirected through various portals, drawing in plenty of the students, as well as one that tore apart the back of her costume. Kenda managed to grab onto Metal Collar. The villain had forcefully moved him, disrupting the portals. Snipe fired off a few shots and shadows retreated. Does anyone here have a quirk that can help them go fast? He asked as he ran over to 13 to check on her injuries. Kaibara could, but he got grabbed, Monoma informed. I didn't get a chance to copy his quirk, I'm dash. If you apologize to me for that, I'm giving you detention. It's not your fault. Snipe shut down the apology and ushered the kids back towards the door, getting Shiozaki to pick 13 up with her vines. Unfortunately, the villains had noticed that Snipe was no longer firing on them and had rushed up the stairs. Damn it. Snipe held back from cursing further as he tried to fire, but his gun had run out of ammo. Taking out the cartridge, he threw it at one of the villains, breaking their nose. Twirling his gun, he grabbed it by the barrel and hit an incoming villain in the jugular, then kicked them in the crotch before bringing a hard elbow down on the base of their neck. With his free hand he punched another villain, then stomped on their foot, and finally he grabbed them by their costume and headbutted them. He got out another cartridge and loaded it into his gun, and while doing so hard elbowed an incoming villain in the face, sending them to the floor, and he then delivered vicious kick to their head, knocking them out cold. Kids, as much as I hate to say it, you're gonna need to fight. Work together and keep each other safe. Looking at Monoma for a moment, Snipe got an idea. Monoma, you go with Ishido to the control room. He gave him his keycard. Use this to get in, then barricade the door. I need you two to use the control room to help your classmates that got separated from you. Zero, use your tape to act as makeshift bandages for 13 until we can get her medical treatment. The rest of you, protect each other. Ishido, he stopped her before she could run off with Monoma. There's an old communication system in the control room. Try to see if they're only jamming our usual frequency and get reinforcements here. Right. Ishido nodded as ran off with Monoma in the direction of the control room that Snipe had pointed out. I need to go back up, Vlad. Just yell for me if you need me and I'll come running, Snipe told them before he ran back to the stairs and ran down them, shooting a villain that tried to run at him in the leg and used them as a springboard and jumped up. With a wider view he fired 4 more times, each one hitting their target. Tucking into a roll he landed near Vlad and put his back to the blood user. 13 is down and students have been scattered around the USJ, we need to wrap things up here fast. Easier said than done, let's change that, Vlad said as he used more of his blood to cover himself in armor. Let's go. He yelled out as he slammed his fists together. The villains took a step back at the display, but Hans was doing what he had been since the moment the fighting had started, watching. The villains rushed forward, hoping to overwhelm the two heroes, but Vlad pulled his surprise out immediately and turned his armor into multiple tendrils of blood that slammed several villains into the ground and punched others away. The ones that had been thrown away immediately got back up only to be shot at by Snipe, forcing the few who hadn't been shot to dive for what cover they could find. The water for the boat rescue simulation began to swirl wildly, a whirlpool having formed further into the zone. It caused a distraction to a few of the villains that Snipe immediately took advantage of. Vlad did what he could to take down the other villains, but Shadows kept grabbing other villains that weren't fighting in the other zones to back them up. Hans suddenly gave a signal to Shadows, and he stopped bringing in reinforcements, and soon enough Vlad knocked out the last villain with a blood punch. Nomu, attack Vlad King, Hans gave the order to Nomu, and in the blink of the eye the towering villain had rushed forward and brutally punched Vlad into the stairs, creating a giant crater around the hero as he coughed up blood from the hit. Vlad! Snipe yelled out, only for Hans to get the drop on him in his shocked state. Grabbing his right elbow with all 5 fingers, his elbow began to decay. Snipe grunted out in pain, but he refused to let the villain hear him scream. When one of your allies is in trouble you freeze for a split second. I noticed it with some of the villains that almost managed to sneak past you and attack Vlad King. Hans revealed his observations as he removed his hand from Snipe's elbow, the skin having decayed, and the muscle exposed and slightly decayed underneath. Snipe tried to raise his gun to fire, but Hans grabbed it and decayed it as well, depriving him of his weapon. You put up an amazing fight, Snipe, but we've won. Nomu, just by the calling the villain's name it rushed over and slammed Snipe into the ground. Sensei! Mineta screamed out where he was hiding alongside Tsuyu and Kaibara. All Might will be proven as the false symbol that he is if I can kill some of the students. Hans rushed forward and reached his hand out towards Tsuyu, ready to decay her, only for something to pierce his outstretched hand and his shoulder. He fell to the floor as the hand on his right shoulder came loose. Looking back he saw Snipe still pinned under Noma's massive hand with one of his hands slightly free, 3 fingers outstretched from the rocks he just threw. Amazing, you're truly amazing. Hans let out a small laugh as he got back to his feet. Snipe glared through the broken lenses of his mask at Hans. If you think for even a moment that I'll let you hurt those kids so long as I breath dash, he was cut off as Nomu applied more weight to him. He couldn't hold himself back from screaming, but he still grabbed another piece of rubble and threw it at Hans, manipulating its trajectory so that it would hit his neck. Suddenly though, Nomu appeared in front of Hans and took the hit to its chest. It pierced it slightly but then fell the ground. Snipe rolled himself over onto his stomach and got onto one knee. He began to push himself up when the doors of the USJ opened loudly. Everyone at the entrance plaza stopped to look at the entrance and saw All Might there, wearing a forest green jacket and not sporting his signature smile. What is going on here? And he finally arrives, Hans said as he stepped back. All Might. I am Tamura Shigaraki, and today is the day you fall. I was considering coming here but then we get a call, and I rush over here to see this. He walked down the stairs slowly, stopping for a moment to help get Vlad out of the crater he had been stuck in. Snipe, what is the current situation? All pro heroes are heavily injured, one of the villains has a portal quirk and spread some of the students across the USJ, and Bakugo was among the ones displaced, Snipe reported as he got to his feet. He tore a few strips from his cloak and wrapped them around his arm. Hans most likely has a 5-point decay quirk and Beak over there is apparently called Nomu. He backed away slowly, but Hans didn't pay him any mind, has super strength and something to do with kinetic energy. Shock absorption, Tamura gloated, no matter how much you hit him your hits will do nothing. All Might pushed Snipe behind him. Go help the students. He took his jacket off and tossed it onto one of the trees. Snipe ran back up the stairs, helping Vlad up them once he reached his friend. All Might rushed forward and punched Nomu in the gut and pushed him back a bit. Nomu then delivered a punch of its own that All Might dodged, and they quickly began to exchange blows. They kept picking up speed, with All Might working to dodge as many hits as he could while Nomu didn't even bother trying to dodge. The force of their attacks created a whirlwind around them, pushing back all the villains that were near them and throwing debris into the air. It was quickly apparent that both combatants were in a stalemate of strength. Suddenly, Bakugo came rocketing out of the cover that Kirishima and Tetsu were hiding behind, and went straight for Shigaraki, die villain. He reached out his hand, ready to let out an explosion, but Nomu abandoned its fight with All Might and rushed at Bakugo, primed to kill him. A plume of dust was sent up from where Nomu had hit, and it impacted into the inner wall of the building. Shit! Snipe cursed. While initially to everyone else it looked like Bakugo had been hit, he saw that All Might had pushed him out of the way and took the hit himself. All Might stepped out of the crater and coughed up some blood, and then shot Bakugo a glare. It seems you still haven't learned. He let out a sigh. I could have just let him get hit, but that's not the man that young Izuku looked up to. I will not spit on what he strived to be, no matter how difficult the brat makes it. He cracked his neck and knuckles. That was an impressive hit. I'm surprised you're not gloating about it, Nomu. Nomu has no reason to gloat, he was built purely to kill you. Shigaraki yelled out, just as a wave of ice hit Nomu and covered half its body. Todoroki glared at Shigaraki, but one glare from All Might and he started running up the stairs to rejoin his classmates. Now things are even. Nomu suddenly broke off its chunk of body that was encased in ice, to the horror of those that saw it. It then regenerated everything, from the bone all the way to the skin itself. Shigaraki let out a gleeful laugh. He also has super regeneration, he's invincible. All Might paused. That would make Nomu an experiment of all for ones. Does that mean he's alive? Wait. So you're saying he's created from a test tube? Yes. Built from nothing just to kill you. Shigaraki yelled out in glee, believing that All Might was beginning to fall into despair at facing an opponent he couldn't beat. All that he was made for was to kill you. It is his entire purpose, he has no other. He will follow all of my commands as my mindless soldier. Heroics Law 28 subsection 4, All Might muttered to himself. Nomu rushed at him and tried to deliver another punch but he dodged to the side. I could argue for it, end this quickly, but there needs to be explicit proof outside of the word of a villain. I can't risk it, I won't. The two powerhouses began to exchange punches again. It's not a nullification ability. If it was he wouldn't be taking as much damage as he is. If I can overwhelm it I can send it flying. Snipe pulled Todoroki behind him as a villain with a fire quirk rushed at them and delivered a haymaker to them. Looking around, more of his students were returning. Where's Bakugo? But the civilian was unaccounted for. Don't know, after All Might saved him he ran off, Vlad said as he worked through his injuries to keep the villains back. If he ran off to fight more villains, we're gonna have a problem. All Might blocked a punch, but it left his scarred side open and Nomu took advantage, grabbing at it and digging its thumb into the healed-over hole that All for One had dug into him. Toshinori held back any sound of pain and brought his hands together over Nomu's arm and brought them crashing down, tearing it off. He dug it out and threw it aside, but he stumbled slightly. Shit, that went deeper than I thought. I need to finish this fa-. He coughed up blood and stumbled back. He looked at the blood he had coughed up onto the ground for a moment, his eyes wide. If I die here, young Izuku, he'll hate himself. 6 months ago. Sensei. Izuku waved at Toshinori, who was leaning against a railing, panting with a small puddle of blood in the grass behind him. Are you okay? Yes, I just pushed myself a bit too hard trying to get here for training. I'm fine. Toshinori waved Izuku's concerns off, before he noticed how misty his successor's eyes had gotten. You got hurt because of me. Present. He'll blame himself for not being here to help, for everyone getting hurt. Toshinori grit his teeth. That boy is the kindest person I've ever met. I failed him already and my search is proving fruitless, and these villains. You're keeping me from looking for him. Shigaraki tilted his head at All Might. What did you say? Suddenly, Toshinori rushed forward and punched Nomu into the air. I have more important things to do than dealing with you wannabe villain idiots. He roared, jumping high into the air and delivering a vicious kick to Nomu's chest, sending him back down to earth, creating a massive creature around the beast as it landed. All Might landed feet first on Nomu and jumped off. I have to find him, I have to know he's okay. I'm supposed to be searching for him and instead I'm dealing with some idiots who thought it was a good idea to break into a hero school. He grabbed Nomu by its arm and began to spin in place rapidly, almost creating a tornado. He was moving so fast. I can't reach them. Kurogiri yelled out just before Toshinori let go and threw Nomu through the USJ's glass dome. Toshinori stood there panting for a few moments before his glowing eyes turned to Shigaraki and Kurogiri. Now for you. He moved to go for them but he stumbled slightly. He had pushed himself too far and now his injury was beginning to rear its curse. No. Shigaraki screamed out, scratching at his neck, rapidly scratching off lines of his skin. I came here to kill the symbol of peace and I will. He rushed forward, ignoring his injuries, and reached his hand out, ready to decay Toshinori. Suddenly, 3 shots were heard. 2 of them took out Shigaraki's legs while the third hit his outreached hand. Did you think that was the only gun I had, you son of a bitch? Snipe yelled out from the top of the stairs, holding a revolver in his left hand, smoke still wafting from the barrel. And behind him were the other teachers of UA. The mission is a failure, we must retreat at once. Kurogiri said as he created a series of protective portals around Shigaraki. Know this, All Might. Shigaraki yelled out as he began to sink into a portal. You will fall and it will be by my hands. The world will see you for the false symbol that you are. If he had anything left to say, he didn't get the chance as the portal closed and the leaders for the attacking villains retreated. The teachers of UA quickly made quick work of the villains that were still active within the immediate vicinity of the USJ's entrance, and they began to work their way through the facility, taking care of any remaining villains, collecting students who hadn't been able to return to the entrance, and looking for Bakugo. Nizu was on Hound Dog's shoulder as they handled searching for the former student. With his actions here I can circumvent the board and keep him from ever going to any of the facilities within the campus, but I don't think I'll be able to keep him out of the classroom. Hound Dog hummed in agreement. They've always been difficult, but maybe this'll be what can help you get them finally removed. When Nizu had won the right to own UA, back then as Shiber High, the commission had put in place a board to monitor him and ensure he did was in the interest of the students and the school at large. He certainly did, but they grew drunk on the fame that being on the board of UA gave them and did everything to ensure that fame, not letting Nizu remove the expulsion rule after it had served its purpose, dragging their feet on allowing him to build dorm rooms, allowing other hero schools to participate in the sports festival, and the most recent annoyance that Nizu had finally been able to circumvent, not allowing him to fire Aizawa for the unjust expulsions he did and keeping him from bringing those students back into his school. They believe that they knew better than him, but not once have they ever actually done anything for the school. Before Nizu could agree with him, Hound Dog picked up a scent and went after it. It took them to the small area known as the River Flooding Zone, a new addition that was still under construction. In front of them were the bodies of several villains, torn apart by what Nizu might describe as a meat shredder. What happened here? Suddenly a loud bang was heard and a spray of blood came out from within the wooded area of the zone. Hound Dog rushed over and saw a blonde woman in a blood-red uniform pointing a large rifle at Bikugu. The corpse of a villain was right beside her, their head blown clean off. "What I wouldn't give to kill you right here," she spoke with a British accent. "Unfortunately for you, the right to kill you has been claimed by someone else." She noticed the two heroes and turned to look at them, revealing that her right arm was a mass of shadows. "Seems we have company. Unfortunately, that young man is under the protection of UA until we can ensure he is safe from danger." Nizu spoke up from the top of Hound Dog's head. "Am I correct in assuming you work for Inko Midoriya?" "I do. I am Ceres Victoria, her head of security upon her sacred isle." Ceres gave a two-fingered salute with shadow tendrils and easily lifted the large rifle and rested it against her shoulder. "I am simply here to ensure that only Lady Inko can kill the murderer of Prince Izuku, and no one else." Her red eyes glinted dangerously, "But she will want to know why he is still being taught at this school, despite you clearly not being under the effects of his guardian angel, Principal Nizu. Or do you prefer Subject 3-4, or maybe Nezuko, Rimuru, or perhaps Fluffy?" Nizu's fur stood on end as he heard the names of his past. The number assigned to him by the scientists who experimented on him, and the names of the 3 pet animals that had been fused into him. "How do you dash?" Ceres cut him off. "My lady has many connections." A pentagram appeared beneath her. "It seems my time up here in the mortal world is at an end. Tell All Might that Prince Izuku is slowly healing and that Lady Inko awaits for him to find her sigil." In a bright red flash she was gone. Bikugu fell to his knees, shaking in pure fear. The pure hatred in her eyes, the way her finger had curled around the trigger and how ready she was to kill him. He'd only felt like this once when the sludge villain had a hold of him. "What were you thinking?" Hound Dog yelled at him. "You just ran off to attack more villains. That's grounds to charge you with vigilantism." The guidance counselor picked him and began to make his way back to the other teachers. "You could have avoided this if you just listened." The 2 heroics classes were outside the USJ, getting looked over by medics as police put the villains into cars and transport vans, getting my identification on all of them. "I want to know if this is a first offense or if they're repeat offenders. Be ready to cross-reference them to any unsolved crimes and someone start looking into the 2 that got away." A detective shot out orders. He had a special badge on his coat that denoted him as a UA chief. If there was an incident on UA grounds, a UA chief was a member of the police force that the school trusted enough to handle the incident and would be in charge while on the grounds. "Detective Tsukachi." An officer with a cat head quirk came running up. "We found the villain Nomu in the wooded area nearby just like All Might said. He's not moving or anything, we've got him chained up but we're gonna need a bigger transport." "Alright, call one in and keep at least 6 guns trained on him at all times." Nomu was able to go up against All Might and is to be considered a constant threat. "Sansa, I want everyone to keep a good distance away in case he starts moving." Tsukachi relayed the order and then made his way over to Snipe. "All students are accounted for and Nizu just radioed in that they found Katsuki Bikugu." "That's good to hear. I'll give my statement once I'm wrapped up here. Talk to 13 if you're having trouble getting the security footage." Snipe nodded at Tsukachi as a medic wrapped up his arm in preparation to move him to a hospital. "Sansa!" Tsukachi yelled out, "I'm going to check in on All Might. You're in charge while I'm gone." Sansa gave a quick salute as Tsukachi walked off to the nearby nurse's station. He gave a quick knock, "It's Detective Tsukachi," and entered. "Masa, good to see you." Toshinori smiled at one of the few people who were friends with him both in and out of hero work. "How's Sansa doing? You two still going strong?" Naomasa smiled lightly. "We're doing good, finally moved in together just last week." "How are your injuries?" He took a seat next to Toshinori's bed, taking a quick glance at the journal and phone that his friend had in front of him. "They're healing up fine, but Recovery Girl took an X-ray to see if the damage to my organs was worsened. I've been stuck here doing research. Toshinori gestured to the book and phone, which he soon returned to scrolling and writing stuff down. Did you find that stuff I asked about? It's taking some time to go through everything, but I'll be sending you what we have on the cults we've busted. Their rituals and knowledge of the occult. Do you really think it'll help? I have to hope it will. We never knew the supernatural existed in the first place, so we're going into a new field blind. Recovery Girl came back into the room and drew their attention by clearing her throat. I didn't think this was possible, but Toshinori, your organs are regenerating. What? Naomasa yelled out as he jumped to his feet. Are you certain? Toshinori asked, not able to believe it. Due to his refusal to take a break and let himself heal, his body had become permanently damaged to the point that it couldn't be fixed. It had given him a literal timer on his time as a hero. The part of your left lung that we had to amputate is restored, and your stomach and lower intestines are in the process of growing back. The stranger thing though is this, she held up one of the X-rays which showed his insides glowing green, and there was a symbol there. A rabbit head with strange teeth. When I checked to see if there was any energy from a quirk that could be causing this, the machine picked this up instead. Do you know what? Recovery Girl's question was cut off as she saw Toshinori start to cry. Yesterday he had gone to the Midoriya apartment in hopes that there may have been something there he could use to get in contact with either Izuku or Inko. It had been completely cleaned out of anything that showed a family had lived there, except for a drawing of a child's future hero costume. A costume that he had died in. Toshinori didn't know which of them had done this, but one of the Midoriyas was giving him a sign. Hazbin Hotel. Izuku let out a sneeze as he stepped away from the shelves. It had taken longer than expected to get all the binders sorted because underneath the pile they had found a bunch of cookbooks. Sorry about all this, he said to Vaggie as she walked over to the counter while he started to make some hibiscus tea. It's fine, but you didn't mention anything about cookbooks. Vaggie waved him off. Because I didn't own those back when I was alive, but they're all cookbooks I once wanted. We couldn't afford them back then, at least I thought we couldn't, Izuku muttered bitterly. So if you don't mind me asking, is there anyone on Earth that you're hoping to talk to? Izuku paused for a moment. All Might, he's the only person who was ever like a dad to me. I just want him to know that I was okay, at least, that I'm really alive. Charlie's been teaching me some magic. We're trying to build up to me being able to get in contact with him. Until then I have to satisfy myself with spawning in my ingredients with it, Izuku chuckled. You know, every night I make a little plate for him, put it in the incinerator with a little prayer for his health. I hope he's doing okay. Izuku's happy expression fell and Vaggie looked at him worried. I'm sure he's okay. If he's the one who taught you, then he's gotta be doing great. She tried to cheer him up, with little success. But it got a small smile. Sorahiko took a deep breath as he walked along the sidewalk. A night spent in the hospital with 2 visits from Recovery Girl was enough for him to be discharged. His right arm was in a cast as it hadn't healed completely. He was however exhausted, but he needed to talk with someone before he went home to go to bed. Stopping in front of an old rundown apartment building, he saw someone else coming along the side the opposite way he had been coming. All Yagi, this is a surprise. Toshinori looked at him confused. Right, you didn't get a chance to see me without my mask. It's me, Snipe. Snipe? Yagi took in the slightly tanned man with dreadlocks, not done up like he does when in uniform. How are you healing? Pretty good. I'll just need some rest before I can see Recovery Girl again to fix this up. I was luckier than Sekijiro. How's your injuries? Healed up. What are you doing here? Toshinori gestured at the old building. I'm here to talk to my grandpa. He's got experience giving lessons from stuff like the USJ and I was hoping for some advice. What about you? My sensei lives here. He taught me after my first teacher passed, Toshinori said slowly as he looked closer at the Sorahiko. Sorahiko looked at the building. Did Gramps get a roommate? Taking the key that his grandfather had given him, Sorahiko opened the door and was greeted with a flying boot to the face that he dodged to the side. You don't call in years and then you text me out of the blue. What the hell is Sora? A small old man in a pro-hero suit looked at Sorahiko in surprise. Hey Gramps, you expecting company? He gestured over to Toshinori. Toshinori gave a quick bow. Sensei, it's good to see you again. Snipe was pretty certain that Toshinori was trembling slightly. Toshi, I see you've met my grandson Sorahiko, Gran Torino, also known as Sorahiko Torino, crossed his arms at his old disciple. Now will you explain what that text was about? Can he be trusted with it? Toshinori gestured to Sora. I know he can. Now both of you get inside, it's cold. Torino walked back into his building with Toshinori and Sora following behind him. Hazbin Hotel. Okay, I think I got everything right for this, Charlie said as she lit the final of 14 candles. Are you ready? She asked Izuku, who was kneeling in the middle of the candles. As I can be. How is this going to work? Charlie grabbed an old book and opened it to a bookmarked page. Well, it's been a long time since I last saw this done. Not a lot of Hellborn possess the capacity for an awakening, and sinners come down here already awakened, so I'm going off of the book and I don't know if it's become outdated. A friend of mine, well, I don't know if she still considers us friends, couldn't say when I asked, so we're gonna hope for the best. She had a strained smile on her face, but Izuku looked at her attentively, trusting her completely. I don't want him to have to get better by consuming any more souls. If he can awaken, then that opens up better ways for us to heal him. I'll follow your lead. Charlie took a deep breath. Okay, cup both of your hands together like you're trying to cup water in them. Izuku did as instructed. Now, channel what magic you do know into the palms of your hands, but do not manifest anything. Izuku's hands began to glow a faint green, just as it had begun to do when he would summon forth ingredients for his recipes. Charlie had first started teaching him magic as a way for them to bond, but when Octavia told her about finding out if he could awaken would tell them, then it became her trying to get him to the level he needed for the ritual. And now, bring forth a memory that holds the greatest value to you, and hold it, relive it. This was the part that she scared of. The memory was critical for the ritual, but Izuku's death would most likely be his most valuable memory, and to relive it would hurt him. Izuku let out a grunt and lines all across his body began to glow green. There were some that framed his eyes, made his ears glow, but others took on weird shapes at certain points, little starbursts, and Charlie knew that was where his scars were. There were so many. How could someone do this to another? Who are you? Izuku said out loud. He had gone into the trance. You looked so scared, Kaken. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. All Might. What do you mean inherit? The memory kept moving forward and Charlie thanked everything that it didn't seem to be Izuku's death. I got in UA. Kaken will after me, you go fight Ida. Charlie's eyes widened. This wasn't right. The memory wouldn't switch over to another. That's not how the ritual works. Izu? She whispered at him, hoping to recenter the trance. Clearly something had gone wrong. I'm a Deku who can do it. Izuku suddenly yelled out, startling Charlie. I'm sorry, Yagi-sensei, I failed you. Who are you, Mom? And then Izuku's mouth opened and he roared. The candles went out and the room was cast into near darkness, the only source of light being Izuku. Well, this is interesting. Izuku said, but it wasn't his voice. It sounded female, older than him as well. Who are you? Charlie jumped to her feet and pointed her trident at whatever was currently possessing Izuku's body. Me? I'm Nana. It's so nice to meet you, Charlie. Thank you for taking care of 9. I wish I could extend out our thanks to the others, but we can only talk while in this circle. Could you extend it to them? Nana smiled at Charlie, but it just looked wrong on Izuku's face. It wasn't his smile, it wasn't his voice, and the way she looked at Charlie wasn't him. Why are you possessing Izuku? What pantheon do you come from? Why did you call him 9? She fired off the most important questions and had not moved her trident. Never let your guard down around a possession, that's what her mom once told her. We were already within him, we just couldn't talk or anything. We're not part of any pantheon, at least I don't think we fall under any pantheon, although our situation is unique, so who knows. And I called him 9 because he's the 9th wielder. Nana answered and Charlie could tell she was being honest, but it only raised more questions. So there's 8 of you. Can I talk to 7 then? Or any of the others? And what is he the wielder of? Charlie could feel herself begin to grow fearful. She had entered far into territory she had no experience with. I'm 7, 8 has yet to fully join us, but a fragment of him is here. The others are currently fighting off it, and as for what he is the wielder of, that is no longer my secret to tell. If you want to find out, you have to ask him. He's the only one right now who has the right to tell anyone. Who is it? Charlie asked, already dreading the answer. It is whatever someone forced into Nine's body. It's trying to turn him into something, but Priest has been helping us hold it back. He's been in here longer than us. Whatever it is, someone was trying to turn Nine into some sort of weapon. If the transformation goes through, Nine will be completely erased. There will be no getting him back. Nana shared everything, not stopping despite Charlie wishing she would. Priest knows of a way to heal Nine without erasing the souls of the sinners he consumes. It's the only way that we have been able to determine that can make it work, that can force it out of his body where you can capture it. How? What does he need? Charlie almost broke the circle. Everything was coming at her too fast. She couldn't handle it all. There is an arrow buried within the Colosseum in Rome. Get it and stab it into him. It will awaken Priest's old power and grant a similar one to Nine. The sinners he's already consumed, they're being put to work for the defenses, and once they are done their souls will be released into hell. What are you talking about? How is that possible? None of us know, not even Priest. What we do know is that Nine's ability to consume souls does not destroy them. It's almost as though it sends the souls to a new hell, one that forces the sinners through something, as though in preparation for something. The glow of the lines flickered as something began to appear within Izuku's still-cupped palms. The memory will be finishing soon. Thought I had more time. Find the arrow and we'll be able to explain more to you. And whatever you do, do not trust the shield. It lies about its true purpose. Nana yelled out before the glow of the lines went dead. 3 small spheres appeared in Izuku's hands as he opened his eyes and stared at Charlie's trident, still pointed at him, and then he looked at Charlie. Did something happen? Charlie put the trident away and took a few steps back. I'll tell you later. Let's see what you've got. She kneeled in front of him and cupped her hands under his. They both looked at the 3 orbs, fire, water, and wind. There's a thread connecting these 3 together. What do they mean to you? What emotions do you feel when you focus on them? Izuku looked at the orb of fire, drive, hope, passion. He looked at the orb of water, despair, sadness, betrayal. Finally, he looked at the orb of wind, nothing. What do you mean nothing? Izuku could feel his heart hammering. It hurt to look at the orb of wind. It's my death. Everything went numb. I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't see anything. It was just nothing. Charlie looked at the order of the orbs. They matched up with what she understood was the order of events leading up to Izuku's death. That's why the thread was there. Okay, so you can summon forth fire, water, and wind, and the thread indicates that you have the power to combine the magic. Honestly, these 3 magics can be used in cooking. Dad would always use them when he was whipping something up for me and Mom. She gave him a small smile and he gave her a shaky one. Well, guess I'll need to figure out how to use this in cooking. So what happened while I was reliving some things? Charlie hesitated to answer, not because she couldn't but because she didn't know how to. Okay, so I talked to someone who called themselves Nana and 7, and she called you 9. Izuku, what are you the 9th wielder of? Izuku's went wide and he felt the urge to run. I don't dash, he almost lied, but Charlie held his hands firm and kept him there. He took a deep, shaky breath. Promise you won't tell anyone without asking me first, not even Vaggie. I promise. In another room of the hotel, Tenya sat before the magic mirror that Inko had given him, with Vaggie watching him from the corner. This was going to be his first attempt to call his family. It had taken him a while to figure out how the mirror worked. When he called someone in the mortal world with it, created a bubble around both mirrors, big enough to hold both callers, and would synchronize them into a different flow of time, thus working around the difference in the flow of time between hell and the mortal world. Reaching forward, he placed his hand flat on the mirror, Tensei Ida, and spoke his brother's name. Tenya. Tenya. He could hear his brother yell out and rush to the mirror. Seeing his brother's face again after weeks, it did Tenya good. Oh my God, Tenya, you're okay. Are you eating well? Have you been hurt? How are your engines? Do you need to pull any of them out? Are you getting enough orange juice? Are you still exercising? I'm trying to figure out how to get you home. What do you need? Tenya smiled at his big brother. I'm doing quite well actually. Surprisingly, there are people who are quite hospitable in hell. I haven't been hurt at all. I've been keeping up with my diet and exercise. My engines are just fine, although I may have reached the point where I need to go to the next level. Charlie and Izuku ensure I have plenty of orange juice, and... Tenya hesitated to say his final answer to Tensei's myriad of questions. You're going to stay for your friend, aren't you? Tenya tensed as his brother guessed his answer. Tensei let out a sigh. I knew it, the way you talked about him, he inspired you. He's healing, slowly, and I cannot live up to the Ingenium name if I cannot be there for my friend. Tensei chuckled. Okay, if that's the case, let's go over details and figure out communications. So long as I know that you're okay, I can at least focus on everything better. And I know you'd help your friend even if his mother hadn't kidnapped you, but I still want to have a proper word with her about that. Tenya smiled, feeling the weight come off his shoulders hearing his brother accept his plan of action. In another room of the hotel, Ochako was talking with her mom while Razzle and Dazzle watched her, and I'm telling you Mom, I hit the jackpot with them. They didn't judge me for why I decided to become a hero, they help me train and don't laugh at me when I puke, and if you could taste Izuku's cooking you and Dad would be building him a restaurant in no time flat. While her mother hadn't been as receptive to Ochako wanting to stay and help Izuku, she did also accept it. Okay dear, I'm sorry your father couldn't be here. Now that our debt has been cleared, we've been able to take on so much more work. The company is out of the red now. Fuse smiled at her daughter. Now, what was this about you getting a bloody nose because one of your friends was in a skirt? She gave her daughter a teasing smirk as Ochako turned beet red. Earth, Japan, Gran Torino's home. Sora looked between his grandfather and Toshinori several times. So you mean to tell me that Midoriya was originally quirkless until you gave him his quirk? A quirk that, mind you, was literally destroying his bones from his first attempt at using on the very same day he got, which was also the same day of the entrance exam, and you never faced that problem. Meanwhile, Gramps helped train you when the previous wielder Nana Shimura, a hero who marked her name in history for catching several corrupt people, mostly heroes, and did so much against corruption. There are at least 8 international laws against corruption of pro-heroes that were created because of her, died. Why didn't you bring him on to train Midoriya before the year started? He yelled at Toshinori. That's my fault, Sorahiko answered. When Nana died I didn't take it well and I took my anger out on Toshi. By the time I met my wife and we had your mother, our connection had been all but severed. Sora looked at his grandfather in shock before looking at Toshinori. He's not wrong. It was a dark time for us both and neither of us took teacher's death well. Sora pinched the brow of his nose. Okay, clearly you both at least recognize that and are trying to do better, so let's move on from that. Why do you think All For One, a man who was alive for almost 200 years and could steal quirks, whose face you caved in with one of your strongest attacks, is alive? The Nomu possessed several quirks, hyper-regeneration, shock absorption, as well as a few mutative such as his beak and physical size. While there have been other villains who have experimented with giving people multiple quirks, he is the only one I've seen who almost made it work. Nana talked about an enforcer of his, supposedly a giant man with several quirks that her predecessor had warned her about. And I faced some of his lieutenants who had multiple quirks. Even if some mad scientist made Nomu All For One still helped them make the creature, of that I have no doubt, Toshinori spoke with absolute certainty. Sora bounced his leg up and down. Who else knows about this secret? Nizu, Recovery Girl, Detective Tsukachi, and his former sidekick Night Eye. Although he's not exactly trusted right now, given that he looked into Toshi's future without permission, Sorahiko answered. If anyone else aside from those guys knows, then they most likely were told by his successor. Young Izuku hadn't had a chance to tell anyone, but I did have plans to introduce him to some of my inner circle. Mirai though, Toshinori grimaced. He had picked someone out to be my successor, Mirio Togata, and believed he knew better than me about what to do with the quirk. Togata? Sora immediately zeroed in on that. You're aware he's currently a student, right? He is? Mirai hadn't said, just that he was the perfect successor. Did Night Eye tell Togata about the quirk? Does he know he was being groomed to take it? Sora suddenly had a new focus. One for All is an enhancer quirk, the direct opposite of Togata's. None of his training from what I've seen would help him if he actually got One for All. For that matter, how long has Night Eye been on the lookout for a successor for you? I don't know. We cut ties since I got my injury, and when he called me about Togata was the first time we had spoken in years. To any of the other questions, I don't know, Toshinori shrugged. He was starting to see what Sora was getting at. None of the others knew, at least as far as I'm aware, and I've never actually met him. I only saw a picture of him recently when Mirai sent me a letter with his school information, his history as an intern and rank projections. He sent you what? Sora yelled, jumping to his feet. When did he send you that? A few days before I began work at UA. I put it through the shredder once I saw what it was. God damn it. Sora almost punched the wall, but he stopped short. The laws that breaks. How many details did you see? He included a small note that covered what was within. I'd only seen the picture of Togata before I saw the note. Like I said, I immediately shredded it. I need to call Nizu. I don't understand how he could have gotten those records. Only UA staff can have them. What else do you need to talk about? Make it quick. Toshinori pursed his lips. I'm going to be taking an extended vacation from heroics for a while so I can spend more time looking for young Izuku. Could you help Naomasa while he looks for any evidence that could tell us if All for One is alive? He asked the question to both of them. Bah, of course I will. A chance to fuck over that bastard before he can get the drop on us, like I would pass that up. Gran patted Toshinori on the shoulder. I'll come over to UA and see if I can't help out with teaching the kids. Keep an extra set of eyes on that Bakugo brat and make sure no one else gets hurt by him. Sora took a deep breath and steadied his breathing. I'll do what I can, but right now my priority is my students. Is there anyone else you can trust with this secret that could help? If you're suggesting that a centuries-old villain with hundreds of quirks at his disposal to use isn't dead, then we'll need more people. I'll see who else I can find, but for now, except for one, it's just everyone who knows about One for All. Toshinori stood up. Now, I need to get going. Let me know if you need any help with Mirai. I may be taking a break from heroics, but that doesn't mean I won't help out when needed. I'll technically be on emergency standby. He stuck his hand out to shake and Sora took it. Thank you, Sora. Just keep us in the loop and we'll do the same. Sora nodded at him and they both left the apartment building, walking opposite of each other once again. 3 hours later. Toshinori stood before the entrance to a cemetery, holding a few things in hand. He walked in and moved forward to a specific grave in mind, one that he hadn't visited in a long time, but he could still remember where it was like he had seen it yesterday. Stopping in front of it, he kneeled down and took the flowers he had gotten and put them in the little vase in front of the grave, then put some incense into the holder and lit it. He put his hands together in a quick prayer. Hi Mom, sorry I haven't come by in so long. On the dirty grave was Kaido Yagi, the mother of Toshinori Yagi. She had died some years before he met Nana, but her support had given him the drive to become a hero. For a time in his early years, he'd been an active vigilante, and then he met Nana and everything changed. I'll come by soon and clean this up. I'm sorry it's gotten so dirty. He smiled sadly at it. She'd been taken in a villain attack, an inferno just like the incident he had debuted in. There's this kid, you would have loved him. I see so much of myself in him. He's hurt and I can't reach him, but I found something that could. I'm sorry to ask this, but will you please help me one more time? He didn't expect an answer, but a small gust of wind guided the smoke from the incense to brush across his cheek, almost like how his mom would when putting him to bed. Taking a shuddering breath, Toshinori closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His great-grandpa had said that in order to begin learning cursed energy, he must first be able to sense it. He focused on everything around him. He could hear a couple crying somewhere else within the cemetery, someone cleaning one of the graves, a gardener tending to a tree, the traffic driving along the nearby street. He stayed like that for a long time, just listening to the sorrow within the cemetery, until he heard a stuttering breath. Opening one of his eyes, he turned his head slightly, not noticing how his eyes, which already glowed a bright dark blue, were almost glowing neon. He could see a misty shape of something. It looked vaguely humanoid. Closing his eye again, he focused on the thing's breathing. how it was rasping and choking with each breath it took. "Can I offer you some takoyaki?" it asked in a weirdly deep voice. Toshinori's eyes snapped open and he gave the thing his full attention, his eyes glowing neon blue. He could see it clearly now, and his previous assessment of it being humanoid was very much wrong. It had 3 arms near where its mouth was, but beneath it was the coiled-up legs of a centipede. He looked around him and he could see others. He was right, so these are curses. He got to his feet and took a deep breath, and extending his hands out at his side slightly, almost like he was getting ready to do a jumping jack, he flexed his hands as he focused on the palms of them while also focusing on the noises that the curses were making. They had yet to realize he could see them. At the centers of his palms a small pale blue flame appeared. Tendrils reached out from it and covered around his hand, and then began to go up his arm, following the image he kept in his mind. Once the energy was properly in position, he sent it out and it forced the curses to twist and conform, twisting into little tendrils and as they neared his hands, into white bandages. In a few minutes all of the curses within the cemetery had been turned into bandages that covered the entirety of his hands and went part way up his forearms. "So, this is the technique Great-Grandpa Koichi said belonged to our family, curse spirit forging," Toshinori thought as he looked at his covered hands and arms. "Now I just need to get the attention of this Jujutsu Society." And that's it for this week. If you enjoyed, please support the author and support the channel with a like, subscribe and share. A donation if possible, it really makes this worth it. Have a great day.